Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we unfortunately have the unfortunate news of the passing of legendary director Richard Donner. Now, a lot of people, Richard Donner is a very prominent name in terms of directors, at least from the past roughly 50 to 60 years. He's directed a lot of blockbusters, and he's directed a lot of stuff in a lot of different genres. And I'm going to try and go over a few things here, some of my personal favorites and some of the standouts, even though there are a lot of them, because a lot of the movies that he directed are instant classics. And I'll go over some other stuff too. But Richard Donner unfortunately passed away yesterday, July 5th, from not listed what the cause of death is, but it was confirmed by his publishing company that he, yes, indeed, did pass away at the age of 91. Now, Richard Donner actually began a lot of his career in television, and he directed episodes of a lot of different television shows. The original Twilight Zone, the show Combat, which I don't know if a lot of people, probably not a lot of people would remember, maybe seeing it on TV land. And speaking of that, too, Gilligan's Island, The Rifleman, stuff like that. Perry Mason, Get Smart. I mean, he has just a list of stuff. Here's the other funny thing. He directed the Banana Splits Adventure Hour. Now, for those people who don't know what the Banana Splits were, they were kind of like it was a 70s like kid show type of thing. Keep in mind, this man went on roughly 5 to 6 years later and made The Omen as his theatrical debut, and this man was working in children's television. That's just hilarious to me that you go from doing like Banana Splits Adventure Time to directing The Omen. But that's the thing, is the Omen was his first theatrical film, and that movie is so amazing, especially for the time that it was made. The idea that you can villainize a child in a film was something that was kind of foreign in 1976. It wasn't necessarily like, having kids as the villains has happened before. We've seen that with like the original Village of the Damned and stuff like that. But in that movie, they make the child who plays, I don't remember the actor's name, but the child actor that plays Damien, he seems so innocent. He just seems like a normal little boy until weird shit starts happening. Babysitter hangs herself, all that shit. And that is a brutal fucking movie, by the way. If you want to watch like death scenes, like people just committing suicide or people getting decapitated. I mean, there was stuff in that movie that really was not commonplace in cinema at that point in time. It really wouldn't become commonplace until probably around the 80s. So it was really a large part of it, at least the gore effects and stuff, were a precursor to a lot of stuff. Again, this film has a lot of different various deaths in it, and the performance by Gregory Peck in the lead is also very good. Now, here's the other kind of interesting leap. He goes from kids shows to The Omen, which is one of the best horror movies ever made, and then he goes to Superman. And that was one that unfortunately did not end as well for him, even though I love the first two Superman films that he also directed. And the first Superman film is an instant classic. He took the character and he kept it kid-friendly in a sense, but he also made it palatable for adults, and he made the effects and stuff convincing, especially for the time period. Again, we're talking about this movie was released like a year after Star Wars, so they're using a lot of those similar effects. And again, they're also using John Williams to do the score, which didn't hurt. But the first Superman film with Christopher Reeves was a smash hit, and for very good reason. It's a great film. Christopher Reeves does a great job as the duality of Clark Kent and Superman. You have Gene Hackman, a veteran actor, coming in to play Lex Luthor. I mentioned before, actually, Ned Beatty passed away a few weeks ago. I mentioned that before, that he played Otis in those films as well, and Margot Kidder as Lois Lane. So you had a lot of really good actors in that meshed together really well. The effects were good. The music was amazing. It was a film that was really ahead of its time, because we really would, other than those first two Superman films, we really didn't get a really good superhero movie until Tim Burton came out with Batman in 1989. That was kind of the cap, because even the Superman sequels were not that great after two. And the other thing too is they filmed Superman 1 and 2 back to back, and the shit thing that Warner Brothers did at the time was that they finished the first Superman, smash hit, and then Donner is working on Superman 2. So they were released, a few years apart. They were released. The original Superman was released in 1978, and the other one was released. The Superman 2 was released in 1980, and a lot of that had to do somewhat with the post-production and the fact that Donner was basically removed from the project because he wanted the ending to Superman 2 to be a bit more adult-oriented than what the studio wanted. The studio wanted more kid-friendly. He wanted to take it a little bit darker. So that's why the end of Superman 2 is kind of goofy, where they have that whole thing where Zod and his crew are like blowing air through the streets, and there's a guy like his toupee blows off, and there's another guy where his ice cream cone like blows off. There's a lot of goofy stuff at the end of that movie that was sort of tacked in there, mainly by the studio to again try and make the ending a little less adult, I guess maybe you would say. And then of course when they started doing the sequels like Superman 3, which did not do amazing, that movie was again very more closely related to more kid friendly things. They included Richard Pryor in that movie. Because he was big at the box office. Again, I felt that felt very much like a studio decision. And then Superman 4, which was done by Cannon Films. That's just an abortion of a film. But the first two are instant classics that were done by Richard Donner. And that's the other thing, too, is that when he was in his career, in the days where he was actually making television shows, he did also do a lot of cop shows, and that wound up, I think, preparing him in a large part for when he helmed Lethal Weapon in 1987. And he directed all 4 of the Lethal Weapon movies, which is something that you don't really see a lot with long-running series like that, especially when the movies are spread out over a somewhat large period of time. And when I say large period of time, I mean relative. It's about 10 years, 11 years, because the fourth one was in 1998, the first one was in 1987. So I mean, it's only an 11-year period, but still, that's 4 films in 11 years in that franchise. With the fourth one being a bit more removed than the other 2, they kind of pumped out 2 and 3 in relative close proximity to the first one, and those ones did relatively well until the fourth one. But regardless of what it is, it's just it is what it is. He also did some episodes from Tales from the Crypt. Again, you look at stuff from, back when he did the Omen and stuff. He's very good at doing horror. He's very good at doing very suspenseful horror, even though he didn't do a crap ton of them. And then the other movie that I kind of skipped over, which I maybe is also from his experience in children's television, is the Goonies in 1985. I mean, that was, it's one of those things too. Like the Goonies, kind of all the Renaissance directors in Hollywood, all the guys that directed films in multiple genres, most successful films in multiple genres, and did all that stuff. A lot of them seem to be relatively interconnected. You see people like Richard Donner, who's connected to Steven Spielberg through Goonies. Steven Spielberg is connected to people like Robert Zemeckis and Stanley Kubrick. There's this web in Hollywood of really, really great directors, and the fact that they kind of always tend to, at least in the 70s and 80s, they always tended to be funneled into the same projects with one another as directors, producers, stuff like that, which wound up working out very well because you had really good movies. And Richard Donner's filmography is filled with amazing films. I've just listed off a few of them, but all of these are movies that were entertaining to me, and I think that's the main point of it all, is that you can pick certain things apart about Donner films. It's like, oh, it's not realistic, or it's not dreary enough, or he made fun movies. Another thing I also wanted to mention, his second to last film, which was called Timeline. I don't know how many people have actually seen that movie. I actually like that film. It was a very early movie for Gerard Butler and Paul Walker, where it was a time travel movie. But I actually really, really enjoyed that movie, even though it's more or less kind of like a guilty pleasure for me. It's still interesting. But there's a lot to look at with Donner's filmography. He did a lot of these movies. He produced a lot of other films, too. He produced films like the first X-Men in 2000. He was actually signed on as a production person for Goonies 2, which is still, in development, which obviously he'll probably get a posthumous thing to that. He was actively working with Sean Astin and a few other people, I'm pretty sure, to get some... To get some of those movies to get a new Goonies movie off the ground. And it was also rumored that he was coming back to direct Lethal Weapon 5, which had been announced, but obviously, again, that is not going to happen, although I think that if they had him come back and direct, that would have been ridiculous. He was also the executive producer of Tales from the Crypt, in addition to just doing... in addition to directing some of the episodes, he was an executive producer on 93 episodes. which is a large chunk of that series. Um, and he's also one of those few directors that you really see that has a lot of he had a lot of stuff in television and in movies. There's a lot of directors that you see that do not do the duality very well. They don't dip back into television a lot unless it's specific projects after they get out of it. But Richard Donner kind of always liked to culture certain projects that he enjoyed, and I think he also enjoyed horror too, which probably actually had a big portion to do with the Tales from the Crypt. But I really do enjoy that. He also produced the Tales from the Crypt movie, which was Bordello of Blood, which is 1996, but it wasn't as great because you had Dennis Miller as the star, and it wasn't supposed to be a comedy. But regardless of that, he's going to be very greatly missed. It's unfortunate that we lost him, but we have so many great movies to remember him by. And I want to know what you guys' favorites are. You know, what's your favorite Richard Donner film? My personal favorite film of his is probably The Omen because of how creepy it is. I really do enjoy the way that he does the horror in that movie. It's a shame he was not able to come back for the two sequels. I think they would have definitely benefited from his addition as opposed to who they got to actually do them. He also did an Omen television movie, but I think that may have just been his kind of way of, you know, getting back at them a little bit. He did have an executive producer role on The Final Conflict, which was the third Omen film, which starred a very young Sam Neill. But at the same time, it showed in that series when he decided to leave the directing chair, unfortunately. Remember to hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?